I don't torment myself. I do the best I can. I give it everything I've got, give it the old college try.
Gregory.
There was something almost strange about Gregory Peck's final years. The man who had spent decades playing Hollywood's strongest and most honorable heroes was no longer chasing fame. He had already won the Oscar, conquered the box office, and become one of the most respected actors of his generation. But behind the awards and the famous voice was a much quieter story. One about love, regret, and the woman who stayed beside him for nearly half a century. And when Peck died in 2003, that woman was still holding his hand. Her name was Veronique Passani. But their love story did not begin like a Hollywood romance. It began with a newspaper interview. In 1952, Passani was a young French journalist working for François. She was sent to interview Gregory Peck while he was in Rome filming Roman Holiday. At the time, Peck was already becoming one of Hollywood's biggest stars. He was handsome, serious, and seemingly untouchable. Yet something about this young reporter caught his attention. Years later, Peck would tell the story of their first meeting with a smile. He returned to Paris and called Veronique, asking her to lunch. She already had another assignment that day, an interview with Nobel Prize winner Albert Schweitzer at Jean-Paul Sartre's apartment. She gave the assignment away. Instead, she went to spend the afternoon with Gregory Peck. And Peck jokingly told her, "You made the right choice, kiddo." But the real surprise was what happened afterward. Their relationship grew while Peck's first marriage was coming to an end. He had been married to Greta Kukkonen since 1942, and they had 3 sons. Peck later admitted that the marriage had not worked and that he did not think he had been a very good husband. Their divorce was finalized in December 1955. Just one day later, on December 31st, 1955, Gregory Peck married Veronique. They would remain together until his death in 2003, nearly 48 years. And that is where this story becomes much more than another Hollywood romance. Because Peck had already experienced attraction, fame, rumors, and even an affair with his spellbound co-star Ingrid Bergman. Years later, he openly acknowledged that relationship, saying he had a real love for Bergman. So why did Veronique become different? Why did this relationship survive nearly 5 decades while so many Hollywood marriages collapsed? And what did she give Gregory Peck that fame never could? That answer begins with the young man he was before he became Hollywood's most famous gentleman. Long before millions knew the name Gregory Peck, there was a boy named Eldred Gregory Peck growing up in La Jolla, California. And his childhood was not the perfect beginning you might expect for a future Hollywood gentleman. Peck was born in 1916. His parents divorced when he was only 6, and his early years were split between different homes. At times, he lived with his father. At other times, he stayed with his mother or grandmother. Later, he was sent to military school. Peck would eventually describe those years as lonely and full of self-doubt. He once said that by the time he was about 15, he understood that he would have to learn to look after himself. That feeling may have shaped the man he became. He learned to stay calm. He learned to stand on his own. And perhaps most importantly, he learned to hide his fears behind a quiet face. But nobody could have guessed where that would lead. As a young man, Peck did not dream of becoming a movie star. In fact, acting was not even his first choice. His father was a pharmacist, a respected man in their community, and Peck originally followed a very different path. When he entered the University of California, Berkeley, he planned to study medicine. Then something completely unexpected happened. One day, while walking across campus, Peck was noticed by a theater director who needed someone tall enough to play Starbuck in a production based on Moby Dick. Peck was over 6 feet tall, but he had almost no acting experience. He agreed to try, and suddenly, the young man who had planned to become a doctor discovered something he had never known was inside him. He loved acting. That first experience opened a door, then another. By his senior year, Peck had appeared in several university plays and changed his major from pre-med to English. According to Turner Classic Movies, he eventually won a scholarship to the Neighborhood Playhouse in New York, where he studied acting under the legendary Sanford Meisner. But New York was not glamorous. Not even close. Peck arrived with ambition but very little money. He supported himself through odd jobs, including working at the 1939 World's Fair, giving tours and modeling for catalogs. The Los Angeles Times reported that during some of his early days in New York, he was so poor that he sometimes slept in Central Park. Think about that for a moment. The man audiences would eventually see wearing perfect suits, standing beside Hollywood's biggest stars, once struggled simply to survive in New York. And he kept going. He studied. He auditioned. He performed. Then Broadway finally gave him a chance. By 1942, Peck had reached Broadway in Morning Star. Soon, Hollywood came calling. At first, he was not eager to give up the stage. But the movie business saw something in him that he was still learning to see in himself. A tall frame, powerful voice, a serious face, and something harder to explain, a quiet sense of dignity. That combination was about to make him one of the biggest stars in America. But Hollywood was not simply going to give Gregory Peck fame. It was going to test him first. And the first test would come when the shy young actor suddenly found himself standing in front of cameras, surrounded by people who could make or break his career. The transformation from struggling New York actor to Hollywood leading man was about to happen faster than anyone expected. And once it did, Gregory Peck's life, including his first marriage and the love story that would eventually define his private world, would become far more complicated than the gentleman image suggested. Gregory Peck arrived in Hollywood at exactly the right moment. America was entering the 1940s, the movie business was growing, and studios were searching for new stars. Peck had something they could not easily manufacture, a calm presence that made people look at him. His first major film was Days of Glory in 1944. He played a Russian resistance fighter during World War II, and even though the movie itself was not a huge success, Hollywood noticed the new actor immediately. Then came the role that changed everything. In The Keys of the Kingdom, Peck played Father Francis Chisholm, a Catholic priest who spends his life helping people in China. The performance earned him his first Academy Award nomination. And suddenly, Gregory Peck was no longer an unknown actor. He was a star. But there was something unusual about him. He did not seem desperate to become famous. He rarely acted like the typical Hollywood playboy. He spoke carefully. He carried himself with confidence. And his deep voice made even simple lines sound important. Audiences trusted him. That trust became one of his greatest strengths. Over the next few years, Peck appeared in major films such as Spellbound, Duel in the Sun, Gentleman's Agreement, and The Paradigm Case. His career was moving quickly, and Hollywood was turning him into the image of the ideal leading man. Then came 1953, and one movie changed the way the world saw him. Roman Holiday. Peck played American reporter Joe Bradley opposite a young Audrey Hepburn. The movie became a classic, and Hepburn won the Academy Award for Best Actress. But something happened behind the scenes that would quietly change Peck's personal life forever. During the filming in Rome, he met a young French journalist named Véronique Passani. At first, she was simply another reporter assigned to interview him. But after that meeting, she became much more. Peck's personal life was already complicated. He was married to Greta Kukkonen, and they had 3 sons together. Yet the marriage was slowly coming apart. And while Peck was becoming more famous, his private life was becoming harder to keep separate from his public image. This is where the story takes a surprising turn. Because Gregory Peck was not always the faithful, untouchable gentleman people imagined. Years later, he openly admitted that he had an affair with Ingrid Bergman while they were working together on Spellbound. He spoke about it honestly rather than pretending his private life had always been perfect. But there was another relationship that would become far more important. Véronique. Their connection grew after their meeting in Rome, and in 1955 Peck's first marriage ended. Then, on December 31st of that same year, Gregory Peck and Véronique Passani married. She was French. She was a journalist. And unlike the women he had played opposite on screen, she had no interest in becoming part of his Hollywood performance. She knew the man behind it. That may have been exactly what Peck needed. Their marriage would soon produce 2 children, Anthony and Cecilia, while Véronique also became stepmother to Peck's 3 sons from his first marriage. Now Gregory Peck had something he had never truly experienced as a child, a large, complicated family of his own. But success brought another problem. The bigger Peck became, the more pressure followed him. And one of the most important roles of his career was still waiting. In 1962, he would play a lawyer in a small southern town who defended a black man accused of a terrible crime. The film would become one of the defining movies of his career, and the role would win him the Oscar he had been chasing for years. But what happened after that victory revealed something even more important about the man behind the famous face. Because Gregory Peck was about to discover that winning Hollywood's biggest prize did not mean winning everything in life. By the early 1960s, Gregory Peck seemed to have everything. He had a beautiful family, worldwide fame, and the respect of both audiences and critics. But the role that would define his career was still waiting for him. In 1962, Peck became Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird. The story followed a lawyer in Alabama who defended a black man falsely accused of a terrible crime. At a time when America was deeply divided over race, the film asked audiences to choose courage over fear. Peck did not just play Atticus. He became him. The performance earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor, and many people still call it one of the greatest performances in movie history. But something even more meaningful happened years later. Harper Lee, the author of the novel, became one of Peck's closest friends. She once told him that when she watched the movie, she felt as if her own father had come to life on screen. That may have been the highest compliment Peck ever received. Yet behind the applause, life was reminding him that no family was perfect. Peck and Veronique were raising 5 children together in a busy household. Friends often described their home as warm, private, and surprisingly normal for 2 people connected to Hollywood. Unlike many celebrity couples, they stayed away from constant parties and gossip columns. Veronique preferred protecting their family over chasing attention, and Gregory loved her for it. But even the strongest families face heartbreak. In 1975, Peck's eldest son, Jonathan, died by suicide at just 30 years old. The loss shattered Gregory. People who knew him said it was one of the deepest wounds he ever carried. No award or famous role could ease that pain. For a while, Peck became quieter, more reflective. He threw himself into family, charity work, and causes he believed in, including civil rights and humanitarian organizations. The public still saw the elegant movie star, but those closest to him saw a father learning how to live with unimaginable grief.